I used to think the worst thing a person could do was commit a crime. I don't think that anymore. A false accusation is worse. It doesn't just hurt you, it rewrites who you are in everyone else's eyes. It erases your past and replaces it with something you didn't choose. That's what happened to me. And if I'm being honest, it's also what set everything else in motion. My name's William. This is one of the stories I've never told anyone, not properly anyway. Not without leaving things out. This isn't about the first crime I committed. It's about the first one that mattered. Back then, I wasn't a criminal. I had a decent job, a small apartment, a routine that bored me but kept me safe. I kept my head down. I trusted people more than I should have. That was my first mistake. The accusation came out of nowhere. One day I was just called into a meeting. HR. My manager. Someone from legal. You know the kind of room, too clean, too quiet. They told me I had been reported for serious misconduct, theft, data manipulation. Things I didn't even fully understand, let alone do. At first I laughed. I actually laughed. I thought it was a misunderstanding. Something they'd clear up in an hour. It wasn't. By the end of that day, I was escorted out of the building like I was dangerous. People avoided eye contact. A few stared. One guy, I remember this clearly, shook his head at me like he'd always known. That's the thing about accusations. People don't wait for proof. They decide. And once they decide, you're done. I lost my job within a week. My reputation followed right after. No one hires someone with questions hanging over them. Friends got distant. Family tried to be supportive, but even they asked things like, "Are you sure there isn't something you're not telling us?" That's when something in me shifted. Because I knew I hadn't done anything. But I was already paying the price like I had. And that's when the thought first appeared, the one I couldn't get rid of. If I'm going to be treated like a criminal, why not become one? I didn't act on it right away. But I didn't ignore it either. I told myself it was just anger talking. You lose your job, your name gets dragged through the dirt, people look at you like you're something rotten, it messes with your head. Anyone would have dark thoughts. That's what I kept repeating. But the thought didn't fade. It settled in. At first, it was quiet. Just a passing idea when I couldn't sleep. They already think you did something, so what's stopping you? I'd push it away, turn on the TV, scroll endlessly, anything to drown it out. Then reality started piling on. Rejections. Emails that sounded polite but meant no chance. Recruiters ghosting me the second they asked about my last job. Savings shrinking faster than I expected. I started calculating how long I had before rent became a problem. That's when anger turned into something sharper. Not rage. Not exactly. More like justification. I didn't feel innocent anymore, not because I'd done anything, but because innocence didn't matter. It didn't protect me. It didn't help. And slowly, almost without noticing, I stopped asking, "Why me?" and started asking something else. What can I get away with? I wish I could say there was a moment where I stopped and thought, this is wrong. Something clear, something loud enough to pull me back. There wasn't. What I did instead was start looking backward, at the company, at the people who signed those papers, at the system that quietly decided I was disposable. I told myself I wasn't picking a victim. I was correcting something. That's how it starts, by the way. Not with cruelty. With logic that sounds reasonable if you don't look too closely. I still had access to things I shouldn't have. Not officially, those permissions were revoked, but I knew the structure, the weak spots. I knew how careless people get with routines, passwords, habits. I didn't need to break in. I just needed to slip through what was already open. There was one person in particular. Not the one who accused me. Ironically, I never even found out who that was, but someone higher up. Someone who signed off on my termination without a second thought. I picked him. Not because he was the worst. Because he was easy. Once I chose him, everything got quieter in my head. That's the part that should have scared me. Instead of spiraling, I started thinking clearly again, more clearly than I had in weeks. Like my brain finally had something to do besides replaying what happened to me. Planning gave me structure. Control. A sense that I wasn't just reacting anymore. I told myself I wasn't rushing into anything. If I was going to do this, it had to be precise. No loose ends. No panic decisions. I wasn't some reckless idiot. I still believed that about myself. So I started small. Old emails. Archived documents I'd saved out of habit. Public info about the company's systems. Social media profiles. You'd be surprised how much people give away without realizing it, especially the ones who think they're untouchable. I built a routine around it. Coffee. Laptop. Notes. It almost felt like work again. Except this time, I wasn't following rules. I was mapping out how to break them, and more importantly, how not to get caught doing it. The biggest lie people believe about crime is that it's all about big moves. It's not. It's about details no one else thinks matter. I spent days, maybe weeks, I lost track, just watching patterns. Login times. Email habits. Who double-checks things and who just clicks approve. You start to see the gaps after a while. Not because you're smarter, but because you're looking for them. My target, was predictable. Early mornings, always the same coffee place, always posting something vague about grind or leadership. At work, he relied on shortcuts. Delegated everything. Trusted systems more than people. That was the opening. I didn't need to hack anything complicated. I didn't need to force my way in. I just needed to be him, in the right place, at the right time. That's when the plan started taking shape for real, not just anger anymore, not just thoughts. Steps. Clear, simple, almost boring steps. And that's when I realized something unsettling. I wasn't nervous. I was focused. There wasn't a dramatic moment where I said, "This is it." It was quieter than that. One morning, I sat down with my laptop like I had every day before. Same coffee, same routine. The difference was, I stopped observing and started acting. The first step was small. So small it almost felt harmless. Testing access points I suspected would still work. Old credentials. Backup recovery paths. The kind of overlooked cracks that exist because people assume no one will bother checking them. One of them worked. That's all it took. I remember staring at the screen for a long time after that. Not out of fear, but disbelief at how easy it was. Like opening a door you were sure would be locked, only to find it slightly ajar. I told myself I could stop there. That this was enough. Proof that the system wasn't as solid as they claimed. But I didn't stop. Because once you realize the barrier isn't real, the only thing left holding you back is yourself. And by then, I wasn't holding back anymore. Getting in wasn't the hardest part. Staying invisible was. Once I had access, I slowed everything down. No sudden moves, no obvious changes. I treated it like I was walking through someone else's house in the dark, careful not to leave footprints, careful not to touch anything I didn't need to. I studied how he worked. The tone of his emails. The way he approved requests without reading too closely. Even the timing, he liked sending things early, before most people logged in. That detail mattered more than anything. So I adapted. I didn't think of it as impersonation at the time. It felt more like blending in. Like slipping into a role that was already written, just waiting for someone to play it convincingly. The first message I sent as him was simple. Routine. Something no one would question. Still, my hands hovered over the keyboard longer than I expected. Not shaking. Not hesitant. Just aware. Because in that moment, something shifted again. I wasn't just planning anymore. I was already doing it. The first email wasn't the crime. It was a test. No one questioned it. No follow-ups, no confusion, nothing flagged. It disappeared into the system like it belonged there. That was the moment I understood just how much trust people place in routine, and how easy it is to exploit. So I escalated. Carefully. The next step involved approvals. Financial ones. Not huge amounts. That would have been stupid, but enough to matter. Small transfers, justified with normal-looking documentation, sent at the right time, signed off with the right name. His name. I built layers into it. Made it look like multiple people were involved, like everything had already been reviewed. The trick isn't to convince one person, it's to make everyone assume someone else already checked. The first transaction went through without a hitch. No alarms. No emails asking for confirmation. Just processed. That's when the adrenaline hit. Not panic, nothing like that. It was sharper. Cleaner. A quiet realization that I had just crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. And no one, not a single person, had noticed. After the first one, it should have been enough. That's what I told myself, at least. But success does something to your brain. It rewires your sense of risk. What felt impossible yesterday starts to feel routine today. And routine is where you stop being careful. I didn't make that mistake right away. At first, I stayed disciplined. Same pattern, same limits. Small amounts spaced out, always buried under legitimate activity. I even skipped days on purpose, just to keep it from forming a pattern. But inside, something was building. Confidence. Not the good kind, the quiet, creeping kind that convinces you you're smarter than everyone else in the room. I started noticing more opportunities. Places where controls overlapped badly. Where one approval cancelled out another. Where people trusted reports without checking the source. It stopped feeling like theft. It felt like optimization. Like I was just taking advantage of a broken system that no one else cared enough to fix. And that's the lie that really hooked me. If it's this easy, maybe it's not even wrong. It didn't fall apart all at once. Just a small crack. An email I wasn't supposed to see, forwarded internally, flagged with urgent. Someone in accounting noticed a discrepancy. Not a big one, but enough to ask questions. The kind of question that usually gets brushed off. Except this time, it didn't. I read the thread 3 times, trying to figure out what gave it away. The numbers? The timing? Or just bad luck? That was the first time I felt something close to fear. Not panic. Not yet. But the illusion of control slipped a little. I stopped everything immediately. No more actions, no more logins. Just silence. I told myself it would die down, that someone higher up would dismiss it like they always do. But then he responded. My target. Casual tone. Confident. He brushed it off, said he'd take a look. Told them not to worry. Reading his words I had been imitating, I felt something twist in my chest. Because for the first time, I wasn't ahead of the situation anymore. I was inside it. After that thread, everything felt tighter. Like the walls had moved in just a little, even if nothing had actually changed yet. I told myself to stay calm. Stick to the plan, do nothing, say nothing, wait it out. Most internal investigations die from lack of momentum. People get busy, priorities shift, and small inconsistencies disappear under bigger problems. But this didn't disappear. More emails. More people looped in. Quiet questions turning into structured checks. Someone from compliance got involved. That's when I knew it wasn't just a passing concern anymore. I kept reading everything I could access. That was my mistake. Because the closer I got to their investigation, the closer they got to me. They started mapping timelines. Cross-referencing approvals. Looking at access logs. And for the first time, I saw it clearly. There were patterns. Subtle ones. Ones I thought were invisible. But they were there. And worse, someone had noticed. That's when the fear finally hit, not as a spike, but as something steady and cold. Because I realized I wasn't watching them anymore. They were starting to trace me. Panic makes people sloppy. I knew that, so I forced myself not to panic. Instead, I treated it like another problem to solve. If they were finding patterns, I needed to break them, or better yet, redirect them. Make the data point somewhere else. Somewhere believable. I went back in. That alone was a risk I shouldn't have taken, but at that point, doing nothing felt worse. Waiting felt like surrender. So I adjusted things. Timestamps shifted slightly. Logs nudged just enough to blur sequences. I even introduced small inconsistencies tied to other users. Nothing extreme, just enough to widen the circle of suspicion. It worked, for a moment. The investigation slowed. The emails became less certain, more speculative. I could almost feel the confusion spreading through their messages. But something changed. The tone. Less assumption, more precision. Someone new had stepped in, someone who wasn't guessing. And that's the thing about trying to erase your tracks. Every move you make leaves another one behind. I wasn't disappearing anymore. I was making myself harder to ignore. It happened on a Tuesday. Nothing dramatic at first. No sirens, no chaos. Just a knock on my apartment door, calm, deliberate, almost polite. But the second I heard it, I knew. You don't go through weeks of watching an investigation build without imagining that moment. I opened the door anyway. 2 people. Not uniforms, worse. Calm faces, badges, the kind of tone that says they already know more than they need to. They asked if we could talk. Not if I knew why they were there. Just talk. I let them in. Part of me thought I could still control it. Explain things, minimize, redirect. I'd spent so long manipulating systems and people indirectly, I almost believed I could do it face to face. They started simple. Background questions. My old job. My termination. Then they showed me the timeline. Clean. Structured. Precise. Not everything, but enough. That's when it hit me. All the small cracks I thought I could manage had aligned into something solid. And I was standing right in the middle of it. I didn't confess right away. That's the part people expect, the breakdown, the immediate collapse. But it doesn't work like that. Your mind fights to hold on to control, even when it's slipping through your fingers. I answered carefully. Chose my words like I had been choosing actions all along. Kept things vague where I could, precise where I had to be. They let me talk. That was the strategy. Give me space to build my own version of the story. And I tried. But every time I adjusted something, they already had a piece that didn't fit. A timestamp. An access point. A pattern I thought was invisible. Eventually, it stopped being a conversation. It became quiet. I remember looking down at my hands, realizing how still they were. No shaking. No panic. Just this strange clarity. Because the truth was sitting right there, between us. And for the first time, I understood something I hadn't before. I wasn't explaining anymore. I was deciding whether to keep lying, or finally admit who I'd become. I told them. Not everything at once, but enough. Enough for it to stop being a game, enough for the version of me I'd been holding on to finally collapse. There's no relief in confessing like people think. No sudden release, no clean slate. Just a quiet understanding that whatever comes next, you built it yourself. I was charged. Convicted. The details don't matter as much as the outcome. I didn't get away with it. And the worst part? It wasn't even about the money, or the system, or the person I targeted. It was about that first shift in my head. The moment I decided that being treated like a criminal gave me permission to become one. That's the lie I bought into. If you take anything from this, let it be this: a false accusation can ruin your life, but what you choose to do after that can destroy what's left of you. I wasn't guilty in the beginning. But I made sure I didn't stay that way.